You never notice the moment your name stops meaning something in your own house. It's not loud. It's not violent. It's subtle. A turning of the head instead of a response. A shrug when you speak. A delay between your voice and their ears, like you're speaking through glass. It was a Saturday night. I remember that clearly. One of those quiet, suburban evenings where the sun dies slow behind the cottonwoods and the air feels too clean to hold anything cruel. I had grilled steaks out back while Megan set the table. Riley, her daughter, hadn't lifted a finger, unless you count whatever swipe she made on her phone from the couch. She always managed to be just too tired or just too busy when it came to sharing the load. We sat down at the dinner table around 7:15. 3 places. No music. Just the sound of cutlery. A dog barking somewhere 2 houses down, and the low hum of small talk that never quite reached me. Megan looked like she always did at the end of a long week. Composed. Tired, but in that elegant way that hides all the fatigue in posture and tone. She'd poured herself a glass of white, the kind she buys in bulk because it tastes expensive but isn't. Riley had a LaCroix she barely sipped, and I had a beer, one of the good ones I used to save for the end of long jobs. We'd made it 15 minutes in, past the part where we talked about her work, her friend Trisha's divorce, Riley's AP classes, when it happened. Megan was cutting into her steak. Casual. Effortless. Like she'd rehearsed the line. Like it had waited for its cue. She didn't even look up. "You're convenient." That's how she said it. No anger. No heat. Not even a pause after. She just said it and kept eating. The knife in her hand made a clean line through the meat. It made me think of surgery. Or amputation. I looked at her, thinking maybe she'd correct it. Say she meant something else. That she was tired or joking or that it came out wrong. But she didn't. She wiped her mouth with a napkin and moved on to something about refinancing. As if what she'd just said was an item on a grocery list. As if calling the man who paid for her daughter's school lunches and filled her gas tank and fixed the leak under the sink last week, convenient, wasn't something that needed air. Then Riley chimed in, still looking at her phone. Not even blinking. "Men like you are usually temporary anyway." There was a time I might have corrected her tone. A time when I thought fatherhood was something you could earn by effort alone. But I had stopped raising my voice around Riley the day I realized Megan never would. So I just sat there. I felt the cold of the chair beneath me, the weight of that beer in my hand, the sound of my own breathing in a house that no longer heard me. It would have been easier if they'd yelled, if they'd thrown plates or slammed doors. That kind of disrespect is loud, it begs for confrontation. But this was different. This was a dismissal. The kind you don't argue with because it doesn't offer you the chance. They weren't angry. They were finished. I looked across the table, past Megan's eyes that wouldn't meet mine, past Riley's face illuminated by her screen, and saw it as clear as if someone had written it on the wall. They were already living in a future where I didn't exist. Megan started talking about moving, a new neighborhood closer to her sister. She used words like fresh start, freedom, change. She didn't include me in those visions. Not really. I was background noise, a helpful shadow, a wallet with ears. She said, "When we move, I want a house with more light." Then she caught herself, looked at me for the first time in 20 minutes. "If that's something we're still doing." I smiled. It wasn't fake. It wasn't forced. It was the smile of a man who just felt the floor shift beneath him and decided not to fall. They took that smile as agreement. They always did. That's the part they never understood. That silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is measurement. Calculating depth. Mapping exits. Convenient. Temporary. I turned those words over like a coin in my pocket. Not angry. Not hurt. Just aware. Like discovering that the house you've been fixing for years isn't yours. It's a rental. And the lease is about to end. Riley scraped her chair back before her plate was clean. She didn't say goodnight. Just vanished upstairs, her phone lighting her path better than I ever had. Megan stayed behind, sipping the last of her wine, scrolling through Zillow listings like the house she lived in was already gone. She didn't say it, but I saw it in her face. She was already rehearsing life without me. And in her version of that life, the bills still got paid. The trash still went out. The car still had gas. She hadn't yet considered what happened if all those things stopped. But I had. I cleared the dishes, ran the water, cleaned the countertops. I went through the motions of a man still playing the part. And the entire time, I was thinking about everything I paid for. Not just the obvious things, the mortgage, the food, the car Riley drove without ever checking the oil. But the invisible ones. The ones they never noticed. The subscriptions that kept Riley's shows running. The cloud storage for Megan's design files. The monthly pest control. The dental plans. The therapy sessions that Megan never talked about but always scheduled for Friday mornings. They never noticed how tightly the system was wound. How many things ran through my name. My hands. My labor. They never saw the wires. Just the power. I dried the dishes and turned off the lights. Went to bed beside a woman who had already moved out in her mind. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow, steady, indifferent. And I made a decision. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. If they wanted me to be temporary, I would vanish so completely they wouldn't know how I ever held it all together. If they thought I was convenient, they'd learn what life costs without convenience. Because silence isn't weakness. It's planning. It's the breath before the break. It's the moment the rope goes slack. Right before it snaps. I didn't say a word the next morning. Not because I was too proud or too wounded. Not because I wanted to make a scene. No, scenes are for people trying to be heard. I was done trying. Silence wasn't retreat. It was calculation. I moved like a man packing up his soul in pieces small enough to carry without help. I woke up earlier than usual. Megan was still asleep, her arm draped across the same side of the bed she never shared. Riley's door was shut, muffled music leaking through like always. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, listening to nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just the quiet that follows certainty. The truth was plain. I was no longer part of the house. I was maintenance, utilities, a background hum of function they never thought to thank because it had never stopped. But now it would. I made coffee the way I always did. 1 scoop extra. Megan liked it strong, even though she never admitted it. Habit. I placed her favorite mug beside the pot. The one with the chipped handle and the faded words, "Best day starts now." It meant nothing anymore, but I still did it. Patterns were easier to break from the inside. I took my mug to the back porch and opened my laptop. The sun wasn't even up yet. The sky was still that heavy, pre-dawn gray, like the world hadn't committed to waking. I liked that time. Felt honest. Nothing pretending to be anything else. No smiles. No noise. Just numbers. That's where I went first, the dashboard of our life. The accounts. The payments. The quiet backbone of a house that stayed standing because I never let it rot. Riley's phone plan? Mine. Megan's design software subscriptions? Mine. Renter's insurance? Me again. Streaming services, meal kits, laundry delivery, the pest control guy who came every 3rd Wednesday like clockwork? Me. Their world ran through my spine. So I opened tabs, one by one, and I started cutting. First, Riley's Amazon Prime. Gone. Then the Apple Family Plan. I removed her ID, watched the screen blink, and confirmed the disconnection. The Peloton membership Megan had said she'd start using when work calmed down, canceled. Her Canva Pro account? Gone. The Discover card I'd opened in her name for emergencies? Frozen. Limit dropped. Notifications sent. I made a list as I went. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to see it, the map of a machine dismantled piece by piece. I wasn't destroying anything. I was just pulling back what had always been mine. That's the part they never understood. They thought power was visible, loud. The man at the head of the table. The voice that raised when challenged. But real power is silent. Structural. It's the invisible gravity that keeps everything from floating into chaos. I kept clicking. Megan's Audi lease? Terminating at the end of the cycle. Autopay turned off. The renter's insurance she never remembered we had? Cancelled. Even the Spotify account tied to the Sonos in the kitchen? Disconnected. I paused before one last tab, the biggest one. Bank transfers. There were 3 recurring ones. Rent to the landlord. Riley's prepaid Visa. Megan's second credit card, the one I always paid quietly because she hated seeing the balance. I hovered over them. Then, without blinking, I turned each one off. No delays. No hesitation. The confirmation emails hit my inbox like soft drumbeats. It was 12:43 a.m. I closed the laptop and stared into the dark yard. The neighbor's porch light flickered. Somewhere a dog barked once. The world turned unaware, and my phone started ringing. Riley first, then Megan again. She didn't even bother coming downstairs. They assumed it was a glitch, a bank hiccup, maybe fraud. But I didn't answer. I didn't need to explain. They'd understand soon enough. I turned off the phone. Not just the screen, the whole thing. Shut it down. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. I went to bed and slept like a man no longer carrying the weight of strangers. They didn't notice it right away. That was the part one counted on. The structure didn't collapse in a bang. It sagged. Quietly. Without spectacle. Like a ceiling bowing under the weight of years before the first crack shows. I was already dressed when Megan came down the stairs, barefoot and distracted, scrolling through her phone like she expected something. Maybe a message from her bank. Maybe a shipping update on an order she didn't tell me about. Her eyes were glazed. Hair tied back the lazy way she did when she didn't plan to leave the house. She stopped by the coffee maker and frowned. "No pods?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry, just confused. I sipped mine and pointed at the empty box on the counter. "Last one yesterday." She didn't say thank you. She never did. Just stared at the box. As if the absence of caffeine was a puzzle she wasn't trained to solve. "Didn't you renew the order?" she asked. I looked at her. Just looked. The silence stretched too long. She glanced at her phone again, then walked to the living room without another word. 10 minutes later, I heard it, the first disruption. A small curse, sharp and clipped. "Why is the Wi-Fi not working?" I heard the router being unplugged, replugged, then again, then harder. Megan muttering, tapping, checking settings. Then her voice, louder. "Did you change something?" "Nope," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Should be working fine." She tried again. "Riley says her TikTok won't load. My apps won't sync either. Maybe the bill didn't go through?" I shrugged. "Maybe." Another pause. Longer this time. She looked at me differently. Not suspicion yet, just discomfort. Like the air had shifted a degree and she didn't know why. Then came the second crack. "Riley." I heard her door open upstairs. The heavy stomp of her feet, each one an accusation. "Why isn't my card working?" she snapped, coming down, holding her phone up like a badge. "I tried to order something and it said it was declined." I didn't answer. She looked at Megan. "Mom." Megan looked at me. "I'll check," I said, sipping my coffee. "You check?" Riley said, staring at me like I was a waiter who forgot her order. Megan moved closer, quiet now. "Is it a bank thing? Maybe something froze?" "Maybe." I let the moment hang. "What do you mean, maybe?" Riley said, the sharpness back in her voice, the practiced disdain of a girl used to getting what she wants without knowing where it comes from. "Try again," I said. She stormed off, muttering something I didn't bother catching. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, and left the kitchen. They didn't realize it yet, but the structure was gone. No Wi-Fi, no auto refills, no Visa for fast fashion, no overdraft protection, no cloud sync, no digital cushions, nothing to land on when the comfort cracked. And still, they thought it was temporary. Tech glitch. A momentary lapse in the system they'd never learned to maintain. I left the house without a word. When I returned later that afternoon, Megan was on the phone. Her voice was taut, forced calm. Riley sat on the couch, arms crossed, furious and disconnected. No music, no scrolling, no performance. Just waiting for someone to fix the world. Megan hung up. Her eyes were different now. Not confused, cornered. They said the account was closed. I nodded. Correct. Your name was on it. Still is. So why? I let her question die in the air. Riley looked up. So what, we're just cut off now? Just like that? You said I was temporary, I said. I'm acting accordingly. She blinked. It was a joke. No, it wasn't. Megan sat down slowly. You didn't even talk to me. You weren't listening. The room went quiet. Megan folded her hands in her lap. I thought we had an understanding. We did, I said. You said I was convenient. Riley said I was temporary. So I made changes. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm agreeing with you. They didn't know what to say. For years I had absorbed the weight. Now that I'd stepped away, the vacuum screamed. 2 days passed. Then the real panic began. Emails bounced. Rent unpaid. Passwords changed. Notifications missed. They moved through the house like ghosts, still dressed like people with control, but nothing responded. I heard Megan on the phone with her sister, explaining nothing. Heard Riley trying to call her biological father again, and again, and again. His silence was louder than mine. That night, Megan sat beside me. She didn't touch me. She didn't look at me. I didn't mean it, she whispered. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. They weren't used to a version of me that didn't bend. Now they were learning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't gloat. I just stopped being the thing they leaned on. And they had no idea how hollow the house really was until the foundation left. I didn't announce my leaving. There was no speech, no slammed door, no final accusation meant to echo in their memory. I had already said everything that mattered by saying nothing at all. Silence had become my language, and they were finally fluent enough to understand it. The house changed once they accepted that nothing was coming back online. Not the cards. Not the transfers. Not me. Megan stopped asking questions. Riley stopped pretending not to be afraid. They moved through the rooms slower now, like people in a museum after closing hours, careful not to touch anything they couldn't replace. The confidence drained out of the walls. Even the air felt thinner, stripped of assumption. I packed early in the morning while they slept. Not out of secrecy, but out of courtesy. I didn't want tears. I didn't want last-minute bargaining. I didn't want apologies shaped like fear. I folded my clothes carefully, the way you do when you're closing a chapter instead of running from one. Each drawer emptied felt lighter than the last. I left behind what didn't belong to me anymore. The couch I paid for, the kitchen table, the bed that had been shared in body but not in loyalty. Ownership is more than receipts. It's presence. And mine was already gone. The only thing I took from the kitchen was my mug. The chipped one Megan liked. I left it clean on the counter. Megan woke up just as I zipped the last bag. She stood in the doorway, hair undone, face pale, stripped of the authority she once carried without effort. So this is it? She asked. I didn't stop moving. This is what you described. She swallowed. You didn't have to disappear. I didn't, I said. You erased me first. Riley watched from the stairs. No phone, no smirk, just a girl standing in the ruins of a system she never learned how to build. She didn't speak. She didn't apologize. She only stared at me like I was something she'd assumed was permanent. That assumption died quietly. I walked out with one bag and no regrets. The silence outside felt different. Not empty, earned. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. Like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying so long I forgot it wasn't part of me. They would manage. Or they wouldn't. Either way, it would be honest. Weeks passed without contact. Then months. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Megan downsized. That Riley transferred schools. That things were hard right now. Hard is what happens when convenience leaves. They never said my name. That was fine. Because I wasn't temporary. I was foundational. And when you remove a foundation, the structure doesn't curse the concrete. It collapses inward, confused by its own weakness. I live somewhere quieter now. Smaller. No shared accounts. No invisible expectations. Just a space that answers when I speak and rests when I do. Sometimes I think about that dinner. About the way the words landed. About how easily they dismissed what held them up. And I wonder, not with anger, not with pride, just clarity. Was I wrong to leave without noise? Was I cruel to let them live by the definitions they chose? Or was that the first honest thing I ever did? Tell me, would you have stayed?